Well, I think the virtual world has changed everything, really, hasn't it? So, of course, it is going to have an impact on reflection. And I don't know yet if I've got lots of answers for it, because I've been working on supporting people with reflective practice probably for about 25 years, and this has only been like the last year or so. But there's a few things that I think we can really think about in terms of the virtual world. One is that I think at the moment people are literally clicking in and out of meetings. So there's no time for those, what we might call transitional moments, moving between things. Even like the car was always a big place for social workers to, reflect, driving between visits or driving even home at the end of the day. There would always be a place where I'd get to, and I think when I get to there, I'll stop thinking about work or start thinking about home. So I think reflection, we've always done that in those moments of transition between things. We're not in the car as much now, so that's having an impact. And then those moments of transition are gone when you're clicking in and out of meetings. So one thing that I think is really important, and I always try and model myself if I'm, in meetings with people virtually, is if your meeting is scheduled, I don't know, from 10 to 11, that you finish at 10 to 11, so that then there's 10 minutes before the person is going to click into the next meeting, which is bound to be starting at 11. So that there's always some time that's allowed, which is, I think, time away from the screen to process what you've just done, to think about what you've just done. So I think that's really important for the virtual world. And I would ask managers just to think about how are they providing moments of transition for social workers to be able to reflect in those moments of transition. So that's one thing I think we need to do. Another thing, I suppose, links back to what we've talked about already, is about maybe formalizing things like virtual friendships, maybe making sure that there is enough time in the day for people to come together somehow, just for that informal conversation. So I think those things are important. And then, as you know, because you took it out and did it across the project area, then I worked with Bridget Caffrey, a colleague, and we developed a specific model for group reflection, which was all about adapting to online groups coming together in a virtual way, if you like. So there are, I think, specific models that we could use that have been developed for the online world. Because I do think, even if you think about just social work theory generally, a lot of things have gone out of date now because of the way we're working in a different way. So maybe some of the models of reflection need to be adapted to think about new ways of working, virtual ways of working. So I suppose they're the main things. I suppose if there was only one thing I could do, I would say create those moments of transition for people. Even some people I know have literally been going out and sitting in their car for 10 minutes and playing some music and coming back in again, just to mark the finishing the working day and coming back to home. So I think transition is important to enable us to process and reflect. I think that's the key thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's definitely something that I've picked up on through the work that I've done in the project as well. So I think I felt quite fortunate really to be able to still continue my work across when it changed to the virtual platform, and still was able to do everything that I'd hoped to do. So we're still able to offer one-to-one sessions, group sessions, and that's when I came across the reflective connections. And I think just providing that space for people, and I was able to do that. So I felt really fortunate for being able to do that. But some of the things that came out of it, like you were saying, was that people were missing that, not traveling in the car and having that space to reflect after a visit or on the way home. And people would talk to me about how they would maybe change their clothes at the end of the working day, even though they were still working at home, just so that they felt that they were no longer working, or take the dog for a walk straight after work, or things like that. So it's interesting to hear, isn't it? Because it comes back to what you were saying earlier about that kind of self-care as well, that we're making sure that we're still kind of looking after our own well-being as workers. And even more so now because of working virtually, I think we have to make sure we're taking those moments. And I think what you were saying about having that time at the end of a meeting is kind of really good advice that we could take hold of, really. Make sure you finish a meeting 5 minutes earlier, just so that you've got some headspace before going into the next one, really.
I think if we're asking people to reflect for action and think about what you're going to do, you've got to give them a few minutes to prepare in that time, haven't you? So what's interesting, though, is what you drew out there. And of course, I didn't think about it when I was talking, but some of the advantages that have come from the virtual world, and they have. So things like being able to bring people together for group conversations, and I've been able to have one-to-one sessions with managers who are really wanting to develop their reflective skills in supervision. So, and we wouldn't have been able to do that previously. So I've been able to change my work, I think, in a way that responds more to what people need for reflective support, perhaps, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's really good to think about, because I think we all have had to adapt, but also to learn about how we can actually do things virtually, and actually those opportunities, like you say. It made me think about, with the reflective connection sessions that we ran for the workers, we kind of consulted with managers and staff and kind of asked what would kind of work best for them, because we did a lot of focus on just doing team sessions, group reflective sessions, which was really good because I think it brought about that sense of connection within the team. But we were also keen to kind of build those connections across the whole of the workforce. And Gwynedd is a vast area, so doing it virtually meant that I could have people from teams across the county coming together in the same session, which wouldn't have worked as well if it was kind of done face to face.
Yeah, I suppose because you are so geographically vast, that actually is a really helpful thing.